And welcome to Infowars Nightly News. This is Mike Adams sitting in for Alex Jones tonight. I'm the editor of Natural News. Thanks for joining us tonight. We've got an incredible lineup of news for you. We have exclusive video from Alex, who's on the road in the southwest of the United States right now in Arizona, Grand Canyon area, shooting video, revisiting the sites that he covered in previous films to give you an update on what has happened in the last decade or so since first covering that area. We've also got stories on the organics, the invasion of organics by Monsanto and chemical companies that are trying to get new ingredients, or I should say existing ingredients, newly approved as organic. Even though they're not organic, they're synthetic chemicals and additives in many cases. We're going to be covering that story with an interview with Mark Castell, the executive director of the Cornucopia Institute. We've got a great lineup of stories for you tonight, including something on Fix-A-Flat. Yes, indeed, this is part of the news tonight here on Infowars Nightly News. So beginning, the big news of today is the Super Committee. This is the debt committee. It's entirely unconstitutional, completely illegal, and it is failing. Gee, we couldn't see that coming. The Super Committee has basically abandoned any idea that it's going to be able to reach a debt agreement, some kind of deal. And instead, these automatic cuts are supposed to start kicking in to try to bring the United States back into fiscal balance. Of course, that goal is completely out of reach at this point, because right now, see, the U.S. national debt has now risen above $15 trillion. And it's climbing, and $4 trillion of that was added under the Obama administration. Yay, Obama, $4 trillion more in debt that we will probably never be able to pay back. But there's more on this story. Much of the burden, almost $500 billion, is expected to fall on the defense and national security budgets, reports the mainstream news. But here's the kicker on that. It's not really a cut out of defense spending. It's not really a cut out of the Pentagon. It's just a reduction in the growth of spending. So it's not like we're actually spending any less. It's just some more paper shuffling and smoke and mirrors to make us think that we're making cuts in the national debt, even when we aren't. So the Super Committee is failing. The national debt spending effort to get it under control is failing. Congress is failing. What isn't failing? Well, there's a lot more of that coming up tonight here on Infowars Nightly News, but Fix-A-Flat is not failing. That's actually working, as we'll cover later. Moving on, a college president vows to investigate the pepper spraying incident that happened at the University of California. The president, Mark Yudof, says, quote, "Free speech is part of the DNA of this university, and nonviolent protest has long been central to our history. It's a value we must protect with vigilance." And yet, students who were engaged in peaceful, nonviolent protest were pepper sprayed by a couple of thuggish-looking cops dressed in black, walking in intimidation style with all kinds of gear on and just casually, in an evil way, spraying these protesters. Here's the video. Here he is spraying these people who are now trying to protect themselves, ducking down in a fetal position to try to protect themselves. They aren't a threat. Do they look like a threat to you? Oh, but look at this thug right here. Look at this gangster. Oh, yeah, look at him. He ran out of pepper spray. He needs more. He needs help from his other thuggish colleagues dressed in black who are going to spray these students in their faces too. Oh, it's like an orgy of power and pepper spray. Now they're going to drag them off by their limbs and feet. Oh, yeah, to clear that sidewalk. Woo! Oh, boy. Drooling with power. Makes you feel good if you're a cop, I guess, huh? All right, a little bit of satire there in a sad, pathetic situation. Watching that actually makes me angry. And I'm not trying to go after the good cops that are out there who really do good work. But those cops that we just saw, in my opinion, they are criminals. And they're just drunk with power. And they love to exercise it. They love to spray pepper in the faces of these innocent students who are obviously nonviolent. You know, imagine what would have happened if one of those students pulled out a knife or a firearm and started fighting back. I'm not saying they should do that. Peaceful protest is the way to go. But they were the ones being assaulted in this case. Students were being assaulted by the cops. Let's hope we can get on top of that situation. Moving on, we have a case of a White House shooter now who drove by the White House allegedly and fired an assault rifle, which lodged a bullet into some of the bulletproof glass in the White House building here. Let's see. Mr. Chapman said he had not heard Mr. Ortega talk of taking violent action. Mr. Ortega is the one who has allegedly committed this crime of violence. But more than a year ago, he recalled, Mr. Ortega, and by the way, this is being reported in the New York Times, Mr. Ortega and others watched an anti-government film. Oh my goodness, an anti-government film? Are there such things? On the internet. It's called The Obama Deception, which was written, directed, and produced by Alex Jones, a Texas-based conservative talk show host who has espoused a number of conspiracy theories involving the federal government, says the New York Times. Well, here we go. It's Alex's fault. It's always Alex's fault. Well, let's break this down for a second. First of all, Alex never promotes violence. He always says that we should approach this peacefully, peaceful revolution. Secondly, why is the New York Times calling Alex Jones extremist, saying it's a path to extremism? Is it extreme to open your eyes and see the truth about debt spending and see the truth about the wars that we are engaged in on this planet? Is it extreme to want to know the truth about what's happening behind the scenes in our world, behind the power centers that run our world? Is that extreme? Well, apparently to the New York Times it is. But I tell you what's not extreme to the New York Times is drinking your fluoride, taking your vaccine shots, taking your psychiatric drugs, tuning into the TV like a zombied out, mindless drone. That's not extreme. That's normal. Yeah, if you do that, then you're normal, says the New York Times. You know, it sickens me to see these attacks on Alex Jones. They're going to try to blame Alex for everything merely because he wants to wake people up to the truth of what's really happening out there. It's kind of a cheap shot by the New York Times, kind of a cheap pepper spray in your face kind of shot like we just saw the cops doing to the students at the University of California. I bet you the folks at the New York Times, they're pepper spraying photos of Alex Jones on their wall and laughing to themselves and thinking they're winning. Meanwhile, the New York Times is becoming rapidly extinct because Infowars.com is dominating alternative media. More and more people are turning to Infowars.com and Infowars Nightly News to find out the truth about what's really going on out there. Now, continuing with that truth, next story is, they're blaming Alex Jones again. They're saying that Alex and Gerald Celente are causing a run on the banks. Oh, yeah, this is an article in Forbes magazine. Here's right out of Forbes. The title is, talk show host Alex Jones and guest Gerald Celente call for run on banks. Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. So it's not that the banks blew all their money on derivatives. No, it's not that they stole from governments. It's not that the Fed has been printing this money and using trillions to bail out the rich banksters who are laughing all the way to the bank and stealing money from future generations of Americans and then stealing your houses and seizing your accounts. It's not any of that. Oh, no, it's Alex Jones. Because he says maybe you should put your money in a small local bank instead of one of these big globalist banks. Oh, my God, it's Gerald Celente's fault. Because he told people to think for yourself. You know, get a little gold, get a little silver, turn your paper money into something that's really valuable. So now I guess it's Alex's and Gerald's fault. Well, I guess next is going to be my fault, too, because I'm sitting here in Alex's chair and talking about things that could wake you up as well. They're just going to blame all of us, folks, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because you know that this is where you're getting the real hardcore truth, no matter who they blame, no matter what they say. We're going to keep bringing you the truth right here on Infowars Nightly News, no matter who blames us in the mainstream media. Hey, it's all they can do. Because people aren't even reading their news stories as much anymore. They got to go to the alternative media to find the truth of what's happening. Look, do you realize that the financial crisis that we are in right now, you heard about that 5 years ago on Infowars on the Alex Jones show. More than 5 years ago. And every year since then, Alex has been right again and again and again. and the New York Times can't stand it, and the financial news industry can't stand it. So they're going to try to blame him for people doing what they should have done a long time ago. Get your money out of the bank and turn your useless, or your about to be useless, paper currency into something that might have actual value. Good advice. Any sane person would agree to that. But moving on, let's go to a story where the mainstream media doesn't blame Alex Jones. If we can find one. Here it is. Fake terror plots by the FBI. This has been written up in The Guardian. Fake terror plots, paid informants, the tactics of FBI entrapment are now being questioned. This is amazing. This is a mainstream media news story with the subhead, well, here's a quote out of the story. Even more shocking was that the organization, the money, the weapons, and the motivation for this plot, this terror plot, did not come from Islamic terrorists. No, it came from the FBI itself. And an informant paid to pose as a terrorist masterminded, paying big bucks for help in carrying out an attack. For McWilliams, her own government had actually cajoled and paid her beloved nephew into being a terrorist, created a fake plot, and then jailed him for it. I feel like I'm in the Twilight Zone, she told The Guardian. Well, first of all, I think this is interesting that this story is only appearing in The Guardian outside the United States and not in the U.S. press. The U.S. press seems reluctant to admit the truth that the FBI is keeping itself busy these days by running around and dreaming up its own elaborate terror plots and then recruiting people to carry them out and then catching them. Oh, wow, we caught ourselves again. Look at our A+ paper. You know, they're trying to take credit for catching the very terrorists that they handed them the plots and the blueprints and the weapons and the money and the motivation. It's amazing what you can do if you try to make yourself seem important as a government agency these days. Kind of like the CDC. Maybe they're going to go around and release pandemic flus so that they can then come to the rescue right into town as the hero to stop infectious disease. That's what the FBI is doing. And they've been caught over and over again. Plus, of course, we've got the ATF that's been caught running guns into Mexico. You know, 5 years ago, I wouldn't have believed any of this. And now here I am reporting it to you and knowing that it's true, and you know it's true too. It's astonishing. But moving on the police state actions that you see now in the United States of America, Tampa police have rolled out a tank to deal with a couple of dozen protesters. Oh yes, a tank. This was posted in Business Insider. Now, if you're looking at the picture on the screen, you might say, well, I'm not sure that's really a tank. It doesn't have a main gun on it. Is it really a tank? Well, the answer is yes. We looked it up for you. Yeah, in fact, if you go to the Merriam-Webster dictionary, definition number 3 says a tank is an enclosed, heavily armed and armored combat vehicle that moves on tracks. And can you show that picture again? Look at that. That's a heavily armed and armored combat vehicle that moves on tracks. I guarantee you if I bought one of these and rolled downtown into Austin up on the steps of City Hall, they would say I was driving a tank. But I guess when the government drives a tank into a group of protesters, oh, well, suddenly it's a defensive armored personnel carrier. Don't be alarmed about it. And it probably has special gun ports through which they can spray you with pepper spray. All right, now next we're going to the video of Alex Jones, who's reporting from the field in the Grand Canyon, as we promised at the beginning of this show. He's going to be bringing you some updated information about the same scenes that he visited with his earlier films. Let's take a look.
Hello, friends. It's Alex Jones here reporting from the Grand Canyon. And we've hiked partway down the summit before dusk, and we're only halfway down. We're going to continue on our way down, and we'll file a report for you from the bottom. We have not run into all of the out-of-control police state tactics that we saw at Carlsbad Caverns. And I am intending later to go over to the visitor center, the main visitor center, at the East Rim, where I was basically threatened with arrest 14 years ago for politely asking about the United Nations Biosphere World Heritage Site, which in the documents and executive orders clearly states that